Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Past episodes can be found on the podcast link at drawincustomers.com. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. My name is James Kademan, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and helpful coach to small business owners across the country. And today we're welcoming / preparing to learn from a second time, Noelle Stary, the founder of 20 Lemons and the author of Main Street Moxie. Noelle, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Yeah, this is exciting because it's been a changing time. Almost on it used to be daily level, but I imagine now it's more weekly.
I have to tell you, so to your point, I feel like when I've been working with people, they generally have been saying, hey, I can figure out what I'm doing today and this week. And now I've got people telling me, here are plans for the summer.
Nice. Well,
we have progressed from like a month, a week, or a day to like saying, this is what I'm doing the next like 3 months. And it's been pretty exciting.
That is cool. I'm going to call that progress.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's interesting. Earlier this morning, I had a company try to sell me on a phone system, which I'll call it lukewarm on. But one of their caveats was they wanted a 3-year contract.
Oh.
And I'm like, no, no. One, because contracts of any term, that's 1985 stuff. And 3 years, I'm like, who knows what's going to happen in 3 years?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, it's not a big deal. If you have to get out of the contract, you only owe us half of the value of the contract remaining. I'm like, well, that could be thousands of dollars. So, nah. So anyways, it's interesting that somebody had the stones to ask that, but whatever. All the power to them.
Yeah.
Great. How has 20 Lemons been doing?
So 20 Lemons, we're a full service marketing agency. We've been busy. You know, I had put out the book that we talked about last time, Main Street Moxie, back in January. And some point around January 2021, you know, I was talking to business owners and they were essentially either saying, I'm 30% up, I'm 30% down. I can't handle the stuff if we're up. I can't handle the stuff if we're down. And I would say that, you know, I'm talking to business owners now and they're saying, I'm ready to start doing some long-term planning. Hey, we're still a little down, but my team is stronger. Or, hey, we're a little bit down, but I've situated my new products and I'm clear that we're changing our market space over the next 9 months. And so I feel like people are getting some clarity for like where they want to go, and they are absolutely investing in driving forward.
All right.
No one's sitting on their hands. Like there's no one that I'm talking to that said, I'm just keeping status quo and everything's moving. Tons and tons of changes happening on daily, weekly, monthly basis within businesses to try to push things forward.
Yeah, interesting. You know, it's funny you say about the people that are just sitting on their hands. Anytime I talk with those people, I'm like, I don't need to talk with you anymore. It's not, you kind of bring me down.
Yeah.
When you're talking about just sitting idle and just watching what happens, right? Like you're just watching a kid on a diving board. Let's just see how this plays out, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta be active, the master of your own destiny kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm seeing tons of traction happening all over the place.
All right.
Yeah.
Different media channels or marketing channels than were previously?
Yeah. So interesting. I think social media has been, you know, like, let's kind of start with a conversation around social media. Social media has, during this process, gotten noisy, right? Like a lot of people that weren't on social said, I need to get onto social. Changes have been happening on Facebook on, hey, we're not giving out as much data. We're cutting down. We're giving more, we're putting privacy back in. So people.
Facebook has.
Facebook.
Really?
Facebook. Like from an agency standpoint, I think management of Facebook, managing client accounts has become more challenging. They really, and it's kind of a really interesting perspective or a spin if you think about it. What they're attempting to do, from my opinion, what they're attempting to do is they're saying, I don't want there to be bots occurring, or I don't want there to be fake news occurring. I want to make sure that everything's kind of coming authentically in real time from someone who's engaging. We're seeing certain things where videos that you're putting on one platform can't be utilized on multiple platforms.
Really?
They want the content that you're showing to be authentic to their platform. And so in one sense, they're trying to drive the user to have more loyalty and not really just say, well, I'm on 20 platforms and I'm just repeating data all over the place.
Right.
Yeah. So it's changing this like ecosystem where you want to be, where people are talking. Let's even talk like, do you know what the hottest new social platform is? Clubhouse?
No, I heard somebody talk about Twitch today, but
so I'm seeing tons of action happening on Clubhouse. So like Clubhouse. James,
oh my gosh.
I'm gonna invite
I just gave away my age here, right?
I'm gonna invite you to Clubhouse. So, Clubhouse is kind of a platform that allows for people to jump in and out of audio chat rooms. So no video. So here we're all Zoom fatigued.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I can't jump on to more video chats. I don't want to do it. You have an opportunity here to kind of say, hey, I want to see who's talking about small business marketing on Clubhouse, and different chat rooms open up and you can jump in and you can listen or you can chime in. I have colleagues of mine that are running chats and people come and they listen. And so it's like an engaging environment. It's kind of new. I mean, we are not managing or working with clients on Clubhouse, but we are working with clients that are utilizing it themselves at this point.
All right. Who or what type of business would be ideal for Clubhouse?
So people that I've seen on Clubhouse right now, I have an event planner who's on it. So they're talking about upcoming trends. How do you run parties outside? How do you run socially distanced parties? How do you handle corporate training events when people are getting back together? A second person that I know that's very involved in it, she's in the meetings industry. So again, same industry, two people in the same industry. I have a book publisher that's starting to look at it and dabble on it. Some of the early adopters, I think they've kind of mentioned, they're like, so-and-so invited me to be on a panel on Clubhouse. And so it's multiple people that are kind of getting together to kind of create engaging dialogue. So again, instead of the idea of, hey, I'm picking up my phone and I'm reading articles about what's going on, I'm getting real-time dialogue that people are talking about on topics right now today, right this second.
Wow. But it's audio.
It's audio.
Strictly audio?
Strictly audio.
So how do you scroll and just kill time with audio?
I don't think that's the objective of it. I really think the objective of it is to almost like get people off of scrolling.
All right.
Hand
endless, right? I've not seen the end.
Yeah. And so maybe when I'm doing stuff, so one of the girls that I work with who's in event planning, she actually, kind of to your point about, oh gosh, how do we handle the scrolling situation? She says, I got to get off of Clubhouse. She's like, I have my kids at home. I'm like running errands on my phone and I just keep Clubhouse and I keep jumping from room to room to room and they're talking about different topics. And so she just kind of leaves it running. It's almost like, when you're home and you leave the news on in the background, just so that you're like, I just want to hear what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think people are using it a little bit like that.
Interesting.
Huh. It really it changes the idea of, I want to know what people are talking about or thinking about this minute.
And does it, boy, so many questions here. When somebody posts something on Clubhouse, is it live or is it a recording? And then
no, it's live.
It's live. And then how long does it stay on there? Does it stay on there?
All right. So now you are starting to ask me questions that are out of my realm. Like
Gotcha.
I said,
Okay. Fair.
I haven't played with it that much,
Oh.
but I guess where I'm really kind of going to it is, we're seeing people using traditional social. We're seeing, to your point, you even mentioned another platform. We're seeing new platforms still coming out, new styles that people want to interact. And so I think where the challenge is there's a ton of noise in the channel.
Yeah.
And so
in the social channel.
In the social channels.
You're right.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just you're going to start diving in and saying, no, I want to get more niche. Who I want to talk to, or what I want to talk about, or what I want to listen to. And so I think you're going to get some more of these opportunities to just get into these tighter microcosms for where you want to be.
All right. Interesting. Wow. I'll have to check that out. I'm almost afraid to check it out.
It's a little scary.
Because I never really got on Instagram because from my mind, I'm like, that's one more thing to suck time.
Yes.
I don't need any more time sucks.
Yep.
Don't. Oh I'm probably not going to become a smarter person by jumping on there. So therefore, no time suck. I'm out. Yeah. I pay my people to throw stuff up there.
Yep.
So it looks like we're on there, but I don't need to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like, oh, another one, which I get because I wouldn't mind a shift. I guess the social media shift, right? I think that's necessary. But man, I don't want to be a player in that field, at least not on a personal level. Maybe on a business level, you can outsource it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're seeing a ton of that type of stuff that's happening. I will even tell you some of the stuff that we're pushing or that we're talking about. And I think there's some validity to it is we're going back to some old school direct mail pieces to your local neighborhood.
That's interesting that you say that. With the window company that I have going on, that has given us the most success.
I believe it because you're home, you want to be doing stuff local. We're pitching a lot of the concept of just around the corner. Like we're not asking you to go from New Jersey to Manhattan, New Jersey to Philly. We're saying, hey, by the way, you've been in your house. Did you forget that we serve this awesome pizza right down the street from you? All right. And then you're like, oh my God, I forgot. I love that place. I just forgot about because I keep sitting in my own 10 by 10 office in my basement, right. We've got a little bit of nicer weather coming up. I think that there's opportunities for people to go back to their roots with local town and community-based marketing. I think people want to stay and thrive where they are. Yeah. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of that.
Huh. That's cool. Yeah. It was interesting how we tried online marketing, a few different channels, social channels, and some banner ads, AdWords, all that jazz. But good old fashioned direct mail actually produced. So
Isn't that crazy? I know, because at some point you would have said no one's even looking at their mail right now. But
it's funny.
Going to my mailbox is my adventure. Pretty much my day, right? Awesome. Online. What showed up? If my Amazon box didn't show up, my mailbox came, right? So I check out one or the other, and it kind of gives me an opportunity. And I'm not eating lunch with 20 people. I have a chance to actually look at least what's kind of coming through, right?
Sure, that's a good point. That's so interesting. I remember getting made fun of, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was talking to some people about using postcards and mailers, and they're like, oh my gosh, what is this, 1979? Come on, there's the whole internet. And I'm like, I don't know, there's something to be said for when the mail comes in, you have to look at it and make that judgment. Do I ignore this? Do I toss it? Do I recycle it? Whatever. Or do I look at it, keep it? You can't not look at it. You have to make that judgment. Where I feel like with a lot of banner ads or a lot of online ads, we're so used to seeing them that we almost ignore them intuitively. So I don't know. I have no scientific evidence to back that up.
Well, I think there is some scientific evidence about that. Like we get used to seeing things in certain spots and then we become blind to them. And so you have to actually switch where they are, switch their color, switch their whatever, to start noticing it again. Right.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
It's kind of funny. I mean, as you're like, what I'm really thinking about, as you're saying is, my boyfriend jokes with me about how I keep tinkering with stuff in the house. Like he goes, I thought we're set. And then I start moving stuff all over again. And I guess kind of to the point that you just said, I'm like, I guess I feel like I need a new environment. I just keep switching it up a little,
Funny.
See it different.
I suppose when you see it so often, eventually you're like, I need to change the scenery, even if it's the same scenery that I've seen, just moving it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So have you added clients, or the clients that existed, they expand with you? It sounds like
we've kind of a little bit of all of the above. I think the existing clients, what I've seen is existing clients are still kind of going through ebbs and flows of, hey, we're doing a push. Sorry, let me take a step back. I think where people are is they're like, I still have a lot on my plate.
Sure.
And so with existing clients, people are saying, hey, I can make a big push on something right now. And then they get busy operationally. And then they say, okay, we made some changes operationally. Let's make another push on this. And so that's what I mean by when I'm saying the ebb and flow component. And then we are seeing new inquiries coming through. We are seeing interest in getting new information out there. And this is the part that I think is interesting, is I think people are being creative about what they want to do. I think people are saying they've had enough time where they've had stuff shifting around in their heads, and they've had enough stuff where they've been able to think about, well, what is this really going to mean? Or how can I bring something to market? And I am specifically working with, and I'm happy to mention their name. I'm working with a really interesting pair of women who wrote a leadership development book called Grit, Grace, and Gravitas. Grit, Grace, and
Gravitas.
Yep. And they come from a really strong corporate leadership and training background. And the book was ready in the summer, actually. And they actually said, we're waiting until after the election to put this out. And now that we are in the process of putting it out, and it's now March, right? Like, one of the questions is, why now? Like, why are we distributing this now in March versus August or September, when it was ready to go? It was done. And the book, and I really love the subject matter, and I'd love to talk about it for a second, is Grit, Grace, and Gravitas. And it says, and I am very summarizing this book, it says when leaders are in a state of stress, they move into task and time delegation. Who's getting this stuff done, and when is it going to be in my hands?
Yes. And
the difference of what makes a leader who sets a good example and gets the best results with the best team is able to connect with their team on a very human level. And when they're starting their conversations, instead of jumping into what's the task and when it's done, it's, hey, how are you today? What's going on with you? Where are we at? How can I help support you to get this done? Great. When are we going to have it done by? And they have this sense of grace. And the conversation was, as a country, during the months of August, September, October, there was a lot of stress on the ecosystem that even if you gave this book to someone who is in a leadership position and you said to them, hey, you should read this book, it's going to help you get through the hurdle that you're at, the person would go, in theory, great. I'll put it on the side and I'll get to it when I can get to it. Or
that's what happened to my book all the time.
Or they're going and look at it and they're like, that's really great. There's really good stuff here. I'm really busy. I got to go back to what's the task? When am I getting it done? And they're not going to be able to implement it. And so when I talked to a lot of business leaders, and by the time December rolled around this year, they were basically like, I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. I can't think. And so I feel like, I love January a little bit because I feel like it's a little bit of the great hibernation. And as much as God gave us the pandemic, he also gave us a whole lot of snow this year. And I think what it actually did is it gave everyone a chance to be like, I can't even go to the food store anymore. Like if the food store in my mailbox was my big outing, maybe we're not even getting mail today. And so it kind of, I think, slowed stuff down enough, right? And we've had all these other things that have been slowing down that as we've emerged from January, February, the business owners are saying, all right, I know what I want to be doing for the next 3 months. And so the idea of releasing this type of book now also brings to the market this idea of, hey, we're going to meet you where you're at, and the market's now ready to read this. So we're so-and-so, CEO might have been busy and slammed and couldn't think straight in September, October, November. Maybe as we're coming into this new season, there's a chance to say, maybe we all just need to slow down a little to speed up, right? We're not just trying to survive. We've kind of moved past survival mode. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we figure out, how do we work more effectively with who we're with and how we're with them? And so that's an example of someone that we're working with right now. And, we were just having this conversation because we're getting ready to put the press out. And one of the questions that we're really answering is why now? And I think their answer is like, they said it, and I thought to myself, out of the other 30 or 40 business owners that I work with, this hits the nail on the head. And this makes sense to me because these owners are at a point right now that they could read it and actually absorb it and implement it, where I don't think that was the option 6 or 8 months ago, Yeah,
it's interesting. We were we were almost in a fight or flight preparatory, like what's going to happen next kind of thing. What new mandate is going to come down to try to smack us in the face as a small business or as a business, regardless of size? What new challenge are we going to get from working with the general public or employees, stuff like that? Yep. So I could see how they'd want to pause.
Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, when these conversations were happening in August and September, I didn't get it. Like, and I think that's okay, right? Like, I think there's this like acknowledgement that has to happen in business too. Like, you definitely don't always know what's going on. And when the pandemic started, the conversation was, hey, we're all busy building parachutes while we're already out of the plane. Oh yeah, and by the way, they didn't even give you the material to make the parachute yet. Like, you're hoping to catch it midair.
We got to grab a sheep.
Right. Like, I'm going to grab whatever I can get is going. And it's kind of like, we've made it past the point of jumping out of the airplane, getting the parachute. We kind of made it to the ground. And now we're like, all right, what else is on the ground that I could use to like move things forward? And so I think we as a nation are progressing, I see it when I talk to people bi-coastal. I see it when I talk to people internationally. So it's an interesting spot. And then I think the next part becomes, and I know you and I touched on this for just a second, is how do you start thinking about your long game again?
Right. Yeah, it's no longer about survival by next week.
Yeah.
It's okay, this has been going on for a year, so we should have adapted by now. And it's time to move on.
I mean, in your opinion, do you feel like you're seeing, how far out do you think people are thinking at this point?
So I like to use my wife as a barometer
Okay.
because her and I came from different perceptions
Okay.
in regards to the whole pandemic. I was like initially, so March, we'll call it early March. I'm like, there is no way that they would shut down the economy. No way. And then I was wrong. And then I said, there is no way that they're going to spend trillions of dollars, which is the better part of our annual gross domestic product, to try to crutch this thing up. I was wrong. And then I thought there's no way that people are going to be afraid to go places just universally because they think some zombie apocalypse is going to happen. I was wrong. My wife is like, bolt the doors, lock it up, board the windows. I mean, the zombie apocalypse is here and we are ill prepared. Not to the point that she was hoarding anything or anything like that. She was just, example number one, we would go out to breakfast every Sunday morning.
Oh, uh-huh.
Right? It's kind of fun. We'd always try to hit a different diner or some different place. Just, we're in Madison, there's cool restaurants, so we try to hit a different place every Sunday. It's kind of fun little family thing. So March rolls around, that hit the skids, like, no. So I'm like, hey, we going to breakfast? And she's like, are you crazy? Right? There's a pandemic, right? The scary little word. And I'm like, I think we can still eat eggs. I think we're cool, right? People wash their hands. We're good. And she's like, no way. So we hadn't gone out to breakfast for, well, up until 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I was like, how far do I joke about this? Do I say, you know what I mean? Like,
I have to tell you, we are going on our first dinner date tonight.
Nice. Congrats.
I was trying to figure out, I don't actually know when we fully stopped going out. I was trying to think about this actually today because, you know, today's the day Fauci says it was 1 year ago today that I made my first public announcement about this.
Yeah.
And I remember definitely doing St. Patty's at our house last year. And I absolutely know that I didn't shut my co-working spaces down until end of March. So I definitely know it must have been end of March. But once, to your point, once we kind of like locked down, that was it. Like we just didn't go anywhere. And today, sometime in the next few hours, I will be going to my first restaurant for dinner.
Nice. Get the hazmat suit ready.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. It was interesting also because my wife and I went to dinner. I think that was a couple of weeks ago as well. And the restaurant that we went to was the first time we went to this restaurant ever. And you could tell that they used to have, I don't know if you've ever been at one of those restaurants where they have a long bench and then they have the tables.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And then so one person's on a chair, the other person's on a bench, and it's like a speed dating setup.
Yep.
But you could tell this used to be like that, but now they have 6 feet apart between the tables.
Yep.
I was looking around and I'm thinking, this is cooler now than it would have been if it was set up like that whole speed dating thing. Because I don't want to have a conversation with the person next to me.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to, I would have asked them out to dinner.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird, like there's certain things that are positive. And it was Thursday night, and that place was, I wouldn't call it packed, but I would say that there was a surprising number of people.
Yeah.
And
I think people are, so, okay. So back to the barometer of your wife. So where's her temperament right now? Like what's she saying?
Well, so I make fun of her a little bit. We've been married a long time, so I take that back. I made fun of her all the time. We got a 7-year-old kid. 7-year-old kid really likes baseball. We traveled with him in order for him to play baseball because locally, there was fear rolling around. Okay. So I'm like, does the virus not travel out of town? Like it stops at the border or something like this? I had no problem with the kid playing baseball, but she was like, we can't do anything, right? Like we can't go to breakfast, but we can play baseball. Like it's kind of weird. So now that springtime and eventually summertime are rolling around, we're gearing up for all these sports.
Yeah. See,
And
you're on the 3-month out plan. You're thinking summer. Like
man, I would be
summer
ready if it
almost.
was nice enough out. I'd be like, let's play ball today. No problem with it. But I would have said that in December
Yeah.
or April. I had, from my point of view, I was just like, I don't think this is that big of a deal. And this is, my wife and I have had that argument way too many times. Way too many times.
Your clients, if you had to split them, are they 50-50 on the side? Like, do they tend to hedge more on one side or the other?
The majority of my clients are service-based, and typically service-based, we'll call it 75%, where they're going into people's homes.
Oh, okay. So what
So
does
they
that
have to
look
be on
like?
the side that it's not a big deal. They have to be for their livelihood.
Yep.
So they take precautions, right? There's masks, there's gloves. I even have a massage therapist. She's not going in people's houses. People come to her, but they had a rocky time, and I wouldn't. I feel like they made a couple not great business decisions in closing up and stuff like that for a very long time. But I think they were a whole like ready to go experiment with some virus somewhere kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of creepy when you think of getting a massage by someone in a hazmat suit, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Everyone's adapting in their own way, but the majority of our clients, some of them would do stuff where they would ask the homeowner if they were comfortable being in the house with them, or if they want to be in a different part of the house or just whatever. Because you're talking about like an electrician or a plumber coming in to fix some little thing, you know, where they're going to be in there for an hour or two.
Yeah.
It's like, one, you probably want to be in the house just from a trust point of view, but you also don't want to be breathing down my neck because breathing is a bad thing now.
Yeah.
So I would say, man, April, May of last year, they had stuff figured out. And a lot of them are in the construction trades. So construction here is going gangbusters.
Construction's been off the charts. I think it looks really phenomenal. Jersey today, I don't know where you guys are at or I don't know if it's today or tomorrow. I kind of lost track for a minute. But we're essentially moving from 30% capacity to 50% capacity. Gyms are moving to 50% capacity.
For restaurants and bars, you're talking?
Restaurant, bars, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say a week ago or something like that, moved to 50%.
50%.
Which was a huge move.
Behind you. Right. Like, I have to tell you, the 30% didn't really seem like a big deal. And then all of a sudden we got to 50 and I'm like, that's good. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, well, we're moving, right?
Right. Yes. 50%, I'm like, okay, now at least if you're doing well as a business before, at 50%, you're not doing well, but you may be able to survive. At 25% or 30%, even if you're at 100% capacity of that 30%, you're losing money. There's no survival there if that's long term.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, there's no way they can shut down an economy. Because like all of a sudden when they open up, there's no restaurants. Then what do we do?
Yeah.
So I used to joke, I'm like, if you want to get in the restaurant business, just wait a year. They'll be for sale for cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I've seen some of my restaurants switched from selling B2C to going to like, hey, we're going wholesale and starting to get into retail stores.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I've seen some of my restaurants do that. Some of my guys were in the process. We're talking about, hey, we're going to be doing more. We don't want to be doing as many breakfasts. We're going to close breakfast because no one's commuting. We're going to be doing lunch and dinner businesses, so people are kind of shifting their times. To the point that we talked about before, some of them just said, I'm totally, I have a catering facility that they have already pre-built outside structures that were in place. So they don't even have to do tents. They have outside pre-built spaces already. Right. And their wedding business is up exceptionally because almost no other wedding venues have that traditionally as part of their stock standard locations, right?
Yeah.
I see corporate starting to kind of come back and booking. Pharma is coming back and starting to book stuff that's
Really?
hot off the press, like
You're talking
last
events?
week. Yeah.
Okay.
Some pharma is finally starting to open up their gates. So we're kind of, I see stuff moving. And this is the part where I start saying, oh my gosh, like in 6 months, are we going to be like pandemic? What pandemic?
Yeah, what pandemic?
Over. Like, you kind of start asking the question, right? That's when you start thinking about what does the real future look like? But are we going to do cutbacks again come next winter? And the conversation that I was having with a colleague of mine this morning was whatever systems you put into place to make yourself pandemic ready, we're not just lost, right? Like if we have another reoccurrence or issue or something comes up next fall, next winter, you've already kind of figured out, all right, how do I operate in my new ecosystem? You've been there before, you've done it, right? And so you're able to kind of make some shifts with that. Because I was trying to figure out, are masks here to stay?
God, I hope not.
The conversation I had this morning was, yeah, I think they're going to be part of like a longer term plan for a while. And to your point, I'm like, summer's coming, it's getting nice, people are opening stuff up. I think, people really are running the gambit still for like kind of almost like you to your wife. Like, I think, you guys live in the same house, you have a kid together, and like, you're still probably pretty opposite on a lot of thoughts. So
definitely. Yeah.
I think the general economy is going to feel that way too for a while, but I don't think that the money that's being invested in the economy is being wasted. I think I've seen a lot of innovation come out. I've seen a lot of teams be rearranged. I see people spending. I see people wanting to buy, changing their market. We talked about it last time that we talked about the book. I think businesses, audiences have changed. Like, they have changed the services that they sell, and they've changed who they're selling to.
Right. Yeah, I think quite a few have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hate to use the word pivot because I feel like that's been overused. But in the end, people understand it. I mean, there's a lot of industries that I think have had to change their way of doing things, ready or not. I'd be interesting if this fires back up in the winter again. I think it's going to be a different game. And I mean, I say this with full disclosure that I'm terrible at predicting the future. The government was kind of helping people survive, and they're helping a lot of businesses. From my point of view, from what I've seen, a lot of businesses weren't profitable that well before the pandemic. Now they get this crutch money, and it's helping them limp along, and blaming COVID for like, oh, we're surviving. Thank God we got that PPP loan, which for some businesses, that was a lifesaver to get over this little period. But for other businesses, it was like, well, thank goodness that happened, because we didn't know how we were going to survive this year before the pandemic. So I wonder, in the wintertime, 2021, can we afford to crutch those businesses again? Or do we have to find some other means to not need that crutch?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think part of the crutch money really needed to be used to restructure businesses to be able to handle next year. If with the big if you had to go back to a 30% occupancy, what does your new 30% occupancy situation look like?
Yeah, that'd be,
But I mean, like we talked about, it is X amount more money coming from virtual, or coming from X, or coming from new partnerships that you've developed. And so have you been able to kind of create new things to get there?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to be, maybe diversify your income a little bit. So you're not just relying on, like in the restaurant's case, relying on your Friday and Saturday nights to bring home 80% of your profit, when like, well, crowds aren't a thing anymore. So
yeah,
now you got to rely on the whole week. So Yeah, interesting dynamic. I definitely don't have answers in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hope it goes away by then. And it's kind of like the whole 9/11 thing. We're like, hey, we got TSA and all that because of this, and now that's your reminder that this happened, you know, years ago.
It's
20
kind of
years ago.
funny. Someone mentioned compare this a little bit to 9/11.
Totally.
Yeah, I'd love to even like hear your opinion on that, because they were basically saying, yeah, like it was kind of I'm guessing this is where you're going with it. You're like, hey, it's an outside influence that just came in, kind of bombed the thing, quote unquote.
Yeah,
Like we're adapting to it, and then we're shifting into like, all right, that set some new baselines or framework for us, and here's our new framework.
I feel this is probably more insult to society than anything else, but I don't think that we have the attention span for something really bad. So 9/11 was a really bad thing, and then things happened from that, then kind of just as the generate, like that's 20 years ago, right? I mean, generations, there's people that can vote now that didn't experience that.
Mm.
And you and I both know exactly where we were when we saw that going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were just like, whoa. And we didn't know, like, what does that mean for the next 2 hours? What does that mean for the next month? Like you're just in shock.
Yeah.
Like, do I go to work? And I suppose I mentioned you're right down there. So that was 50 million times worse than it is for us in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like that'd be crazy. I can't even imagine what it was to be within 100 miles of that place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Surreal.
Yeah, you're right.
But then eventually we're just
but it didn't stall us out, right? Like I'm not stalled out from having made other decisions in my life.
Right.
To some degree, right? Like, right. Like you're like, okay, this was a moment in time. It occurred.
Mm-hmm.
There were repercussions, and then we moved on to the rest of our lives.
Right. So are you afraid to go in a tall building now?
No. I mean, and I'm sure that there are some people, but
I imagine,
I think as a majority, we are an adaptive creature, right?
Totally.
And
so social adaptive creature.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel like this just adds that, like, we got to be social. We're social animals all the way. So this, I'm like, after a year, I was hoping it was going to be 3 months because I saw the whole PPP multiplier, like times 2.5, like, oh, it's going to be done in 3 months. We can do that. Ain't no thing.
I definitely remember thinking when it all started, right? Like you have like a very different perspective when you think back. I'm like, why would they be doing all this crazy stuff?
Right.
We're not going to need this. This doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's weird. Hindsight 2020 kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, but I definitely feel tons of more positive energy when I'm talking to people, like a lot of hope, a lot of, here's my plans for the future. I don't get a huge sense of fear when I talk to business owners.
Totally fair. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you guys have a typical winter just like we do in Wisconsin.
Yep.
So I imagine there's the typical hibernation that happens. Yep. And then springtime, when you start getting warm weather, doors are open, clothes are coming off. Maybe not all of them, but some of them kind of thing, like it's this new, like you're out of the cocoon kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's every year. We're just used to that.
Every year. Yeah.
So I think, and I'm just spitballing here now that I think about it, like a lot of places got snow this year that did not normally. Texas, way West Coast, all that kind of stuff, where they're just like, what is this white powdery stuff?
Yeah.
So they kind of get to experience, maybe on a lesser scale, or maybe arguably on a bigger scale since they're not used to it, this whole cocoon thing into the butterfly. Yeah. Like it's a cleansing, we're open, it's new, it's fresh.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
Well, and this is the thing. I think listen, right? Like people talk about like the beauty of seasonality for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. Like I do think, there is still spring before summer. I do still think that we're not just emerging, right? We're not fully like cocooning. Hey, we went from winter to summer overnight.
Fair.
But I think we're seeing this transition period.
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people are coming out of this definitely in a different spot than where they went into it.
Totally agree. Totally
Mm-hmm.
agree. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it changed things, but I feel like we're coming out of it. I feel like that. Don't trust me.
yeah,
I feel like we're coming out of it in a clean way. Whether it made us better people or not, you could argue both directions, but
yeah.
I believe we're coming out of it.
I think we're coming out of it. And I do think I'm seeing most of the businesses that I'm working with coming out of it with new sense of clarity as to how they're running their business or how they're managing their business. I think a lot of the restaurateurs that I work with said, I'm going to cut all my staff. I'm going to go back to doing everything myself. Again, like you're managing cost, like as a business owner, I remember when this whole thing happened, I remember my business coach said to me, the only objective you have is to not kill your business. You just need to let it survive to get through. And I remember in the beginning, I'm like, again, like almost like when you talk about the PPP and you're like, what? 2.3 times, 2.5 times the amount? That's crazy. Yeah. I don't think restaurateurs might have said, I'm going to get rid of my staff. This is only going to be a month, 2 months. I can kind of run it. And that's where I think the exhaustion, the burnout kind of kicked in. But I think people are starting to say, wait, I can work differently, or I can work with a different set of team, or, most of my restaurateurs, as we're going into the summer, they're basically saying, I will have a totally brand new staff than I've ever had before.
Wow.
It's almost
because
like
they laid off their.
it's almost like opening a brand new restaurant. Like some of our biggest bar locations said, it's not worth it to try to stay open through the winter. We're just going to start in the spring. We'll try to bring people back. We're just going to try to do this. We're going to do that.
Wow.
And part of the logic to it was at some point you were killing the morale when it was like less staff or no one in, or people kept getting sick, or you're shutting, you're closing, you're opening, you're shutting. And so again, I think there really, like at some point, needs to almost be a kudos to the business owners as they've gone through this, because being able to kind of keep the morale and positivity through those time periods, I think has been a challenge. And so when I go back and I start talking to my clients that have this book coming out, Grit, Grace, and Gravitas to me in March of 2021 is a whole different story than if someone gave me this book in February or March of 2020.
Definitely March, yeah.
Right. Really, really different story, but
Yeah.
I think we're at a different point where we're hearing that story different today than we would have back then.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about keeping the morale with employees, because I remember, well, actually I still do. I guess that's one of the positive changes here, is that I realized that there was some talk amongst the ranks, and I only have 4 employees, so it's not like there's thousands of them or anything. There's talk amongst the ranks that they were worried, probably from watching the news or whatever, that we were going to shut down or that we were going to have to cut employees. Because they were hearing, they're like a sewing circle, so I imagine they can circle the drain just like any other group. But they're probably hearing from some of our clients that they were worried as well, and universally there was just this big question mark in the air. And I reached out to them and said, look, no one's losing their job. Like, my job is to keep my promise to you, which is that you will have a job. That's all I got to do. And then we have to do our job to make sure that we answer the phones and take care of the business that we got for our clients so that they can do the same for their employees. That's it. There should be no fear about losing job. Nothing. Like, outside of some nuclear fallout or something like that, where phones don't exist, or I can't even imagine the scenario, you're cool. And I was sending emails every month to our clients saying, we got your back. Whatever you need, we got your back. We'll take care of it. We'll help you solve a problem, whatever we can do. And it was interesting because there were some clients that I normally don't hear from that sent me an email thanking me for that. That it was almost a morale booster for them because they were kind of feeling down in the dumps.
Well, I mean, even, like, so I run a marketing company, and then we have some co-working spaces that we're involved in. And to your point, marketing is a support to most business owners, right? Like, we're not a key operation, we're support. And so, I was like having the conversation where I said, our job was to kind of like cheer on our clients. And then at some point, like, even to what you're saying, some of them came back at some point and they said, by the way, how are you guys doing? Like, they're like, you're so busy kind of taking care of us. Is anyone checking in on you? Right. And we do have other people checking on us. We get support elsewhere, but it's like, sometimes everyone was just, it was like, you had to pass the love around, right? Like, who needed it, who could give it. The objective was just everyone couldn't need it the same day, right? Like, you needed someone who can pass it or give it or whatever the case is. And this is where I think this is also, as opposed to 9/11, this is the first time, because I didn't feel it in 9/11, but I felt it now. This is the first time I really felt how interwoven my different industries were, or my different locations were, or, people that are working overseas, or, I felt this is the first time effects on global effects that I've never felt. I haven't felt before. I haven't felt when there was a recession here. I did not feel it in 9/11. And I might have just been too like young or green for that. But this is the first time that I felt it on like a very global perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fair. Like, the whole world was essentially going through something similar, versus 9/11, it was more observation from the rest of the world.
Yeah. Or, like, some of the programmers I work with are overseas, or different teams that I work with are overseas. And, like, me saying, hey, we're finally being let out of certain stuff, and and they tell me I can't leave my house. There's still a guy with a gun outside, or
Whoa.
like, I'm like, wow, I like, but it goes back to that, like, all right, then I need to recognize, wait a minute, maybe they're kind of having a bad day, because maybe they're thinking, you know what, I'd really like to go outside today. I'm not allowed to yet. Right. And so being able to work with your team differently to kind of understand where they're at, I thought was really important through this process too.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that would be tougher. There were times, I guess, I felt like I was in a very large prison, because you can go outside, but it was 20 below.
Yes.
And like, you're in your house. It was kind of like, you can go anywhere, but where would you go?
Yeah. I feel like the big joke when I spoke to a lot of people they're like, I'm actually using all the rooms in my house now. Like, how you have like the formal dining room that no one uses. And now you're like, no, I use every room in my house.
Yeah. That's our office now.
Funny.
I think the co-working space is probably a good metric for what is going on. So how's that going?
Yeah. So co-working's been really interesting. I would say for the greater last several months, the average office space utility has been 10%. So when we think back to the comment that we had about restaurants, and can restaurants operate at 25-30% capacity, and you kind of look at it and you're like, no, at least if we're getting to 50, you've got options. And even before, you had to still get creative. Most offices have not been operating above 10%. However, as we are starting to see a little bit of the weather changes, as we're seeing some, really, I feel like it's weather changes, because even most of the other co-working spaces that I know that started implementing more virtual programs are great. But if at the end of the day, your metric is office space rental and utilization, unless there's butts in the seats, in the doors coming in, your metric's not there, right? And we are seeing increases in inquiries We're seeing people saying, hey, I want to make sure that I have enough space allocated for my team to come back. So
All right.
how teams are starting to come back is starting to look a little different. There has been predictions in the co-working environment that bigger companies are going to be shutting down their bigger offices and trying to relocate to local places. And for months, this has been this is what we're going to see, but I hadn't started seeing it. I am just starting to see those inquiries come in now.
All right.
Not immediate. Like they're like, hey, we're starting plan for several months out, but the inquiries are coming in. So I do think that there's some positivity with that. I think people are definitely going to want to be getting out and seeing people. I don't know if people are going to be going back into major high rises out the gate. I don't see a ton of that. I do think local community-based places are going to do great. I think we're going to do great in that perspective. For this particular industry, I think it's like you've just got to ride that wave.
All right. So you guys wouldn't be at 100% of the time. So what was the norm, let's say in 2019, end of 2019? Percentage wise, are we talking 35?
We were
40?
over 100% capacity. I mean,
over 100%.
Well, you operate, right? Like part of how co-working works is like a gym. If every single member of a gym showed up at the same time, there's not enough equipment.
Gotcha. Okay. But
you're working on the objective of not everyone's going to be there all the time. And so co-working works very similar to that. We probably won't be doing as much turnover in common areas. More spaces will become more dedicated. I do think you're going to see teams coming in. I am hearing from some of the bigger corporate that they're expecting their full teams to be coming in. As long as I've been in co-working, I think that there is commentary that happens, but I think in actuality, it does not generally happen. So I think people are going to come in like what I've been seeing in the spaces is people earlier in the pandemic, I felt people were coming in, but it was like, hey, I have a dedicated space, but I'm showing up for an hour once during the course of a week.
Oh,
very select periods of time. I think people are starting to, no, I'm going to kind of come in several days a week. I'll come in a little bit here and there. I'm not seeing we also, when we get busy, I see more people coming in on weekends and nights or early mornings. I'm not seeing that yet. I'm still seeing people picking periods of time that they come in during traditional work hours right now.
Okay. All right.
So
interesting.
If I start seeing changes there, that will be different. Right the month before the pandemic or the month of the pandemic, the search for co-working in the United States was at the highest. It was at a 5-year high.
Oh,
It literally went like this and like this. Full crash. However, the search terms are coming back. So we know people are looking. And now can we start getting the environment to feel right to bring the people back in?
Got it.
It's been a whirl. It's been a whirlwind,
Yeah, I bet that's probably been more challenging than the marketing piece, I would imagine.
Definitely more challenging. So just kind of waiting. So part of it's been a waiting game, kind of like what the restaurants have been a waiting game. They, there's so many changes you can do, but then you're still capped by the general environment, right? And I think that's a little bit where co-working has been and office space in general has been. So I think it's been more about how do you change terms? How do you change plans? How do you change there again, kind of like the restaurateur that says, I'm getting rid of my staff to cut costs for a while. I think office space management is how do I manage leases different? How do I manage management agreements different? How do I manage, I think you're just managing different things.
All right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Interesting times.
Definitely.
So how you're I keep wanting to say marketing Moxie. It's Main Street Moxie.
Main
I
Street
just attach you to marketing, so I'm sorry.
Yes.
Main Street Moxie. How is that book going?
Main Street Moxie is doing great. So, I mean, I wrote it and put it out during a time that I felt like kind of like what we talked about a little bit before. I wanted business owners to feel like someone's got their back. Someone's there with them. They're not totally alone. I talk about it a lot as stirring the pot. Hey, we may not know everything, but we can at least kind of come up with some thoughts or ideas of how we want to, I talk about in marketing when we're coming up with marketing plans, hey, we're going to stir the pot. We're going to come up with tons of ideas. We're only going to use a few of them. And the other ones we're going to put on a shelf for a little bit. And I felt like Main Street Moxie was a way that I wanted to get out and let people say, hey, let's stir the pot so we can come up with some ideas for how to go forward. I feel like when I'm talking to people today, they're kind of saying the piece that they love the most about the book is it's relatable. Like they're kind of like, I've been there. I get it. I feel you, and I think it's that idea of just letting people know, like, you're not alone and you're getting past things. And then really, I think for me, the biggest eye opener though was, I forget how much, like, during this, there were companies like Schwinn that turned around, or Trek Bikes, and they said, wait a minute, I'm 30% up. I'm like stressed because I have no idea how to handle this type of interest, right? So there was stress on both sides, whether you were down or you were up. So everyone had had challenges. They were just coming to them from different angles. That's
fair. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting times to be a business owner. That is for sure.
It is.
Yeah. I survived 2020.
Yeah.
And 21.
True.
It's a t-shirt ready. Awesome. Noelle. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to tell you one funny thing. I saw a meme this morning, and it was like a little chubby boy on a bike riding really fast, like a home exercise bike. And it said, I thought we were writing off 2021, but now I know summer's around the corner and everything's opening, and I think that's kind of like, I thought it kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, I think we kind of said, we don't know what we're going in for. We don't know how long we're hunkering down for. But you know what? Like, we're all starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And now we're like, holy gosh, is it coming faster than I thought?
Yeah, that's cool. But it's good. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Open it up, kick open the doors.
Yeah.
How can people find you, Noelle?
You can find Main Street Moxie online at Amazon. Or if you want, you can definitely check us out for our marketing company at 20lemons.com, 20lemons, or the co-working space. We are just in Jersey, so we've got an awesome website, coworkinginjersey.com.
Nice. I love it. That's super cool. Well, Noelle, I appreciate you being on the show again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's challenging, but interesting times. We'll just call it that.
Hopefully next time I talk to you, will be full on summertime.
Right?
Butterflies come out.
That's right. We can break out of our cocoon and
awesome.
New beginnings here.
Cool.
Awesome. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening to this on the web, please give this a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and share it with all your entrepreneurial friends. My name is James Kateman, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as Draw In Customers Business Coaching, offering business coaching services for entrepreneurs looking for growth on the web at drawincustomers.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Noelle Stary, the founder of 20 Lemons and author of Main Street Moxie. Noelle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
This has been super cool. I'm excited to talk to you in summer again, see how everything's
Sounds awesome.
rainbows and unicorns, I'm hoping.
Yeah, sounds good.
Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.